Welcome to the debate. Today we're looking at perhaps the most significant friction point in the history of IT management. We have the recent release of the 2026 State of FinOps report, and it has drawn a very sharp line in the sand.
A very sharp line.
Right, on one side of that line you have a discipline that looks like an absolute juggernaut. 96,000 practitioners strong, mass adoption across the Fortune 500, and a scope that now touches basically every corner of the enterprise. But on the other side, we have a community facing a crushing new reality, which is this corporate mandate to self-fund the artificial intelligence revolution entirely through efficiency gains.
Yeah, the self-fund mandate.
Exactly. So the central question we are wrestling with today is this. Is the FinOps Foundation's recent pivot from cloud to technology a visionary evolution that secures the future of the practice? Or is it, as some critics are definitely suggesting, a rebranding exercise designed to mask 5 years of stagnant results? I'll be taking the position that this scope expansion to technology value management is a necessary and frankly inevitable evolution for modern IT strategy.
And I will be taking the position that this report is essentially the report card nobody asked for. And honestly, the grades are alarming. I look at this data and I don't see a victory lap. I see an existential crisis.
An existential crisis?
Yes. We are witnessing what I call the adoption paradox. We have record attendance at conferences, record certification, record noise in the market. Yet, the one metric that actually matters, the one the C-suite cares about, which is waste reduction, hasn't moved an inch. And now into that environment of, stagnation, leadership is dropping an impossible mandate on teams that are already breaking.
I see why you characterize it that way, but I think that perspective kind of misses the forest for the trees. The fact that we're talking about AI, SaaS, and licensing under one roof now is a triumph, not a failure. It means the discipline is graduated.
Graduated? It feels a lot more like we're being held back a grade. I am here to tell you that the industry is failing its core mission. We're setting up small, overworked teams to fail by asking them to fund AI deficits from empty savings wells. We need to be honest about whether we are actually fixing the problem or just renaming it to make ourselves feel better.
Well, let's start with the State of FinOps 2026 report itself. You mentioned the headlines, but I think you're glossing over the incredible success story here regarding reach. We have 96,000 community members. That is up from 95,000, continuing this trend of massive growth. But more importantly, look at the coverage. 98% of FinOps teams now manage AI spend. That is up from 31% just 2 years ago. That is a staggering rate of adaptation. We also see 90% managing SaaS and 64% managing licensing. This tells me that the silo walls are finally coming down. The foundation changing its mission from advancing the people who manage the value of cloud to the value of technology isn't a retreat. It's a recognition of reality. Cloud is just the delivery mechanism, right? The value is in the technology stack as a whole.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that interpretation. I look at that exact same report and I see a hockey stick graph for membership and a completely flat line for results. Cloud waste has remained stuck at roughly 27 to 35% of spend since 2021.
But the sheer volume.
Think about that for a second. 5 years. 5 years of conferences, 5 years of certifications, 5 years of best practices, and we haven't made a dent in the waste. CloudBolt's research found that only 1 in 500 organizations have achieved material impact from FinOps. So when the foundation changes the mission from cloud to technology, it feels less like a promotion and more like a distraction. They couldn't fix the kitchen, which was cloud waste, so they just decided to rename the restaurant to Technology Value Management.
That is a very cynical take, though I would obviously frame it differently. You're focusing on waste as the only metric of success. But FinOps has always been about the trade-off between speed, cost, and quality. The fact that 78% of FinOps teams now report to the CTO or CIO, which is up 18 points by the way, shows that these teams are being invited to the strategy table. They aren't just, janitors cleaning up unused instances anymore.
Right, but
They are becoming architects of value. Flexera framed this perfectly as scope clarity, not scope creep. If 55% of your spend is going to be AI and SaaS, and you stay focused only on public cloud infrastructure, you are rendering yourself obsolete. FinOps had to evolve or die.
Evolving is one thing, drowning is another. And this brings us to what I think is the most dangerous part of this report, which is the self-fund mandate. The report explicitly states that organizations are asking FinOps teams to self-fund AI investments through efficiency gains. Let's translate that for the listeners so we understand the gravity of this.
Go ahead.
You have a team of, on average, 8 to 10 people at a large enterprise. Their scope just exploded by 5x to include SaaS, licensing, and AI. And now leadership is telling them, go find millions of dollars in savings from the cloud budget, which you've already been optimizing for 5 years, mind you, to pay for the most expensive, volatile, and unpredictable workload in the history of computing. It is a destructive fallacy.
I admit the pressure is immense. There is no denying that. But I view this mandate as a sign of strategic importance. Organizations are trusting FinOps teams to finance the most critical innovation of our time. It's a forcing function. It forces teams to move from passive reporting to active architectural influence. And the data actually bears this out. Teams with VP or C-suite engagement have 2 to 4 times more influence over technology selection. The mandate is difficult, yes, but it empowers the practitioner to say, if you want me to find the money for AI, I need a seat at the table when the architecture is being designed.
A seat at the table doesn't magically create money, though. You can't pay AWS with influence. The practitioners in the survey are screaming this from the rooftops. They are saying explicitly, the easy wins are gone. They have already right-sized the EC2 fleet. They have already bought the savings plans. That well is dry. You cannot fund a volatility engine like AI with savings from a static budget like cloud. Sandeep Gale from Maverick put it perfectly. He said AI is blowing up the assumptions baked into budgets. You have these 8-person teams who are now managing labor costs, data centers, private cloud, and AI. It is wishful thinking to believe they can squeeze enough juice from the cloud lemon to pay for a champagne fountain of AI.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it assumes the cloud estate is static. It isn't. It's constantly growing and changing, creating new pockets of inefficiency. However, I want to touch on why AI is so expensive, because I think that's where the real debate lies. You call it a volatility engine, I call it a dynamic value driver. We need to look at why the costs are high and if they're justified.
It's an economic bomb waiting to go off. Let's look at the numbers. We really need to talk about the inference bomb. Everyone focuses on training costs, right? We know GPT-4 cost roughly $150 million to train. That's a big number, sure, but it's a one-time CapEx. It's building the factory. But within 2 years, the inference costs, the cost of actually running the model for users, exceeded $2.3 billion.
Right.
That is a 15 to 20x multiplier. Inference is now 55% of AI spend and climbing. This isn't like storage where you pay for what you keep. This is a model where every single interaction costs money, and the costs are completely opaque.
But isn't that a sign of success? If inference costs are overtaking training costs, it means the models are actually being used. It means they are integrated into production workflows. The high costs represent high utility. We shouldn't be scared of the number 2.3 billion if it's generating 10 billion in value. The problem isn't the cost, it's the value attribution, which is exactly why FinOps is moving to technology value management. If we just look at the bill, we panic. If we look at the ROI, we might be celebrating.
That would be a highly compelling argument if companies actually knew what they were spending. But they don't. 80% of companies miss their AI forecast by 25% or more. This isn't a rounding error, it's financial negligence. Look at Meta. They underestimated their AI costs by 400%, resulting in an $800 million emergency procurement.
They adjusted based on demand.
On the flip side, you have a Fortune 500 company that overestimated by 300% and left $120 million in GPU capacity just sitting idle. The token-based pricing model is an absolute nightmare for forecasting.
Can we pause just for a second to ensure everyone understands the token issue? Because this is distinct from traditional cloud billing, and it's critical to why forecasting is failing right now.
Right. It's a completely different currency.
In traditional cloud, you pay for time, seconds, or hours of a server running. In AI, you pay for tokens. A token is roughly 3/4 of a word. You pay for input tokens, which is what you type in, and output tokens, what the AI writes back. But you also pay for reasoning tokens inside the model that you never even see. So a single prompt misconfiguration can turn a $100 bill into a $17,000 bill overnight because the model got stuck in a loop or hallucinated a novel. We are seeing margin erosion of 6 percentage points or more because of this. This isn't growing pains. This is structural chaos.
It is structural complexity? Certainly. But this is exactly where the FinOps skill set applies. We saw this with the early days of cloud, where people left instances running indefinitely. Now we are seeing it with token consumption. The solution isn't to retreat, it's to develop better tooling and better forecasting models. And the industry is responding. We have AI-driven forecasting now. We have co-pilots for spending suggestions. The messiness of the data is the signal that we need more FinOps, not less.
Ah, the recursive vendor solution. I was waiting for that.
What do you mean?
The AI is too expensive. Buy our AI tool to manage the AI cost. It's a perfect circle of revenue for the vendors. But let's talk about those vendors, specifically the supply chain behavior. Because if you think you can optimize your way out of this with a dashboard, you haven't seen what AWS did in January 2026.
You're referring to the pricing adjustments on capacity blocks?
Adjustments is a very polite word for a stealth tax hike. On January 4th, 2026, a Saturday, mind you, when nobody was watching, AWS raised the price of EC2 capacity blocks for ML instances by 15%. A P5e instance went from roughly $34 to almost $40 an hour. That is an extra $3,700 per month per instance. And here is the real betrayal. Just 7 months prior, they announced price reductions.
Which they did implement.
But those reductions were for on-demand instances that you can't actually get because of the shortage. If you want the chips, you have to buy capacity blocks, basically reserving the GPU for a set time window. So they cut the price of the thing they don't have and raise the price of the thing you have to buy. Corey Quinn called it out correctly. He said, this was a policy decision, not supply and demand.
I see why it feels unfair, but I really must push back on the policy decision claim. This is basic economics. NVIDIA had orders for 2 million H200 chips. They only had inventory for 700,000. When demand outstrips supply by that magnitude, prices go up. Scarcity pricing is a reality of the semiconductor market. AWS isn't a charity. They are managing a highly constrained resource. If they kept prices artificially low, we'd just see massive hoarding. Large enterprises would buy every block available and sit on them. The price hike disciplines the market.
But it traps the user. You are trapped in an ecosystem where you cannot predict the cost because of tokens, and you cannot control the unit price because the vendor changes it on a Saturday. And all the while, Apptio and IBM are selling you AI Lens and promising that an algorithm will fix your budget. If these AI optimization tools actually worked, why has waste stayed flat for 5 years? We are applying the exact same broken logic to a much more expensive problem.
So let's pivot to what actually works then, because I don't want to leave our listeners with just doom and gloom. I believe that despite the vendor complexity, the teams that are succeeding are doing so by leveraging the new scope. They are using the technology value mandate to implement practical solutions. It's not just about complaining about the vendors, it's about engineering.
I agree that we need practical solutions, but the teams that are surviving, and I emphasize surviving, not thriving, are doing specific things, and none of them involve buying a new dashboard. First, they are killing idle GPUs. It sounds basic, but the data is shocking. The average GPU utilization is between 30 and 50%. We have examples of fintech startups wasting $12,000 a month on GPUs sitting at 60% utilization. One team found $340,000 a month in idle compute. The first step isn't AI strategy, it's turning off the lights.
I agree completely. That is traditional FinOps hygiene applied to new hardware. It proves the old methods still work. But I would argue the more strategic move, and the one that truly justifies the technology rebrand, is what we are seeing with model routing. This is where the architectural influence comes in. This is real innovation.
For every single query. If I ask an AI to summarize a routine meeting, I don't need a PhD level model. If you route 90% of your traffic to smaller, cheaper models, the 7B or 8B parameter models, and save the big guns for the complex reasoning tasks, you can cut inference costs by 80 to 86%. That is massive. But, and this is the big but, you can only do that if the FinOps team has the authority to tell engineering you cannot use the big model for everything.
And that reinforces my exact point. That requires the FinOps team to report to the CTO. It requires them to have the mandate to influence application design. If they were just cloud cost people, they wouldn't be allowed in that meeting. Because they are technology value people, they can drive that architectural shift. This confirms that the scope expansion is the key to solving the problem. The title change gives them the badge to enter the room where model routing is actually decided.
Perhaps. But the most important strategy, the one nobody really wants to talk about, is political pushback. The teams that are actually succeeding are the ones refusing the self-fund mandate altogether. They are going to the CFO and saying, the savings well is dry. If you want AI, you need a separate budget line. You cannot strip mine your infrastructure to pay for your R&D. That is a recipe for burnout and technical debt.
That is a fair point, though I would argue that pushback is just another form of negotiation, which is a core FinOps skill anyway. But you are right that honesty about the easy wins being gone is crucial for these teams moving forward.
It's not just crucial, it's survival. We are at a breaking point. We are celebrating enrollment 96,000 members while failing at graduation, which is waste reduction. The industry is patting itself on the back for covering 98% of AI spend, but most of that coverage is just staring at a bill they can't explain and can't forecast.
I think we are seeing the messy middle of a massive transition. The self-fund mandate is incredibly painful, yes, but it is also forcing a level of discipline that was completely lacking during the zero interest rate era of the cloud boom. FinOps is becoming the operating system for all technology value. The chaos of AI pricing, the token complexity, the vendor behavior, this is exactly why these teams are more necessary than ever. They are the only ones who can possibly untangle this knot.
They are necessary, absolutely, but they are being set up to fail. Unless practitioners stand up and reject the idea that they can magically find millions in savings from an already optimized estate, we are going to see a massive wave of burnout. The mission change from cloud to technology is fine on paper, but if it doesn't come with headcount, authority, and a realistic budget, it's just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic while the iceberg of inference costs comes into view.
I suppose that is where we find our common ground today. Whether you view the glass as half full or structurally broken, we both agree that the era of easy wins is over. The future requires shifting from finding waste to architecting value.
And it requires admitting that you can't pay for the future by scavenging the past.
A poignant way to put it. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening to our discussion. We hope this debate helps you navigate your own impossible mandates.
Good luck out there. You're gonna need it.